In the golden age of professional wrestling, one name towered above them all: Hulk Hogan. But behind the scenes, wrestling promoters were obsessed with finding the next big thing. They handpicked the most chiseled physiques, the most charismatic personalities, the most explosive talents. Each one was groomed and positioned as the heir to Hogan's throne. But the question remains, what really happened to wrestling's chosen ones? First up, Lex Luger. Lex Luger was one of wrestling's most impressive physical specimens. WWE invested millions positioning Luger as the next Hulk Hogan, only for him to lose his championship dream at SummerSlam '93. But that failed moment was just the beginning of Luger's shocking story. How did the man once called the total package end up paralyzed in a hotel room, with his girlfriend dead and his legacy in ruins? In 1958, Lawrence Wendell Fole was born in Buffalo, New York. Before he became Lex Luger, he was just another college athlete with NFL dreams that were rapidly unraveling. It all started at Penn State, where Fole's athletic career showed promise. But it was at the University of Miami where things started getting complicated. The Hurricanes should have been his launching pad to professional football, but instead, one moment of rage changed everything. After a particularly frustrating game, Fole lost control in a hotel room outburst that got him immediately kicked off the team. This incident revealed the volatile personality that would both help and haunt him throughout his career. Despite this major setback, Fole's physical gifts were too impressive to ignore. Standing 6'4" with an Olympian physique, broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, chiseled abs, and arms that looked powerful enough to bend steel, he managed to bounce around professional football for a while. He had brief stints with several NFL teams, including the Miami Dolphins and Green Bay Packers, but mostly found himself watching from the sidelines. His USFL career with the Memphis Showboats and Tampa Bay Bandits showed slightly more promise, but football clearly wasn't working out. It was during this period of career limbo in Tampa when fate stepped in. Two wrestling stars, Hiro Matsuda and Barry Windham, spotted Fole at a local gym. Where football had failed to harness his raw athletic potential, wrestling seemed the perfect canvas for his gifts. Wrestling promoters had always had an eye for impressive physical specimens, and Fole fit the bill perfectly. "You've got the look," they told him. "Have you ever considered professional wrestling?" For a struggling athlete facing the end of his football dreams, this suggestion was a lifeline. Fole agreed to train under Matsuda, not fully understanding what he was getting himself into. Matsuda wasn't just any trainer. He was notorious for his brutal methods. This was the same man who had famously broken Hulk Hogan's leg during training to test his commitment to the business. If you trained with Matsuda, you were proving your toughness. The training was grueling. Hours of painful submission holds, endless cardio drills, and learning how to fall hundreds of times a day on unforgiving wrestling mats. Many would have quit, but Fole's determination, the same stubbornness that had gotten him into trouble before, now became his greatest asset. He endured the pain, absorbed the knowledge, and was forged in the fires of Matsuda's merciless training. In 1985, Lawrence Fole disappeared, and Lex Luger was born. Championship Wrestling from Florida became his training ground, where he worked his first matches and began developing his in-ring persona. The name Lex Luger was inspired by the comic book villain Lex Luthor, fitting for a man whose imposing presence naturally cast him as a heel, or bad guy, in the wrestling world. What made Luger stand out immediately was how quickly he adapted to the ring. Most athletes transitioning to wrestling look awkward for years, but Luger moved like he'd been born to do this. His combination of power moves, surprising agility, and natural charisma made promoters take notice right away. Eddie Graham, the legendary promoter running Championship Wrestling from Florida, saw dollar signs in Luger. He quickly moved him up the card, giving him matches against increasingly prominent opponents. Within months, Luger was already working with established stars and holding his own. By 1987, just 2 years after his debut, Luger accomplished something almost unheard of for such a newcomer. He defeated Nikita Koloff for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. This was the second most prestigious championship in the National Wrestling Alliance. For a wrestler with barely 2 years of experience, this was the equivalent of a rookie quarterback winning the Super Bowl MVP. The victory established Luger as more than a pretty face with muscles. He was now officially a force in professional wrestling, a legitimate star who could headline shows and draw crowds. Fall washout to wrestling sensation in less than 3 years. But as Luger held that United States Championship, his career was about to transform completely when wrestling's most prestigious faction came calling. The Four Horsemen, led by the nature boy Ric Flair himself, had their eyes on the muscular phenomenon. This was wrestling royalty, the elite table that few ever got to sit at. In the NWA Jim Crockett Promotions landscape of 1987, the Four Horsemen represented the gold standard of wrestling excellence. Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard were masters of technical ability who made opponents look foolish with their precision while living the high life outside the ring. They weren't about flash or gimmicks. They were simply the best. What made the Horsemen decide to gamble on Luger? With just 2 years of experience, he was hardly the polished performer that defined the group's reputation. But what Luger lacked in technical expertise, he made up for with his imposing physique and undeniable star potential. The contrast was striking, like adding a sledgehammer to a set of surgical instruments. The elegant, technically brilliant Horseman recruited this physical specimen who relied primarily on power moves. Luger brought raw power that we simply didn't have before, Ric Flair would later reflect. He completed our arsenal. This created a fascinating dynamic within the group. Flair, Anderson, and Blanchard wrestled with precision and skill, while Luger brought intimidating presence. He was their muscle, their enforcer, a different flavor that complemented the group's established style. The benefits for Luger were immediate and substantial. Almost overnight, he went from promising rookie to sitting at the table with wrestling's elite. The mentorship he received behind the scenes proved invaluable. Every night, he watched masters of their craft work. Every ride between towns became a classroom where Flair, Anderson, and Blanchard shared wisdom about psychology, timing, and the business aspects of wrestling. These lessons accelerated Luger's development in ways that would have been impossible on his own. His confidence grew with each match, and his in-ring performances became more nuanced. He began incorporating subtleties he'd learned from his Horseman stablemates. Little things like proper timing, facial expressions that told a story, and understanding when to showcase power versus when to sell his opponent's offense. The association elevated Luger's status exponentially. Being a Horseman meant higher profile matches against top talent. Television time increased. His face appeared on more promotional materials. The rub from Flair, widely considered the greatest world champion of that era, gave Luger instant credibility. When fans saw him standing alongside these established stars, they naturally viewed him as belonging at that level. But success in wrestling rarely comes without complications. As Luger grew more comfortable in his role and gained popularity with fans, subtle tensions began brewing within the faction. The Horsemen had always been Flair's group. He was the unchallenged leader, the world heavyweight champion, the man fans paid to see. But now, Luger's impressive physique and improving skills were drawing attention and admiration, particularly from female fans. What started as friendly competition gradually evolved into something more complex. Luger's ambition became increasingly evident. He wanted more than just to be Flair's backup. He wanted to be the star. The United States Championship around his waist was prestigious, but the group's hierarchy was clear. Flair's World Heavyweight Championship was the crown jewel. The question became inevitable. Was Luger content being second in command, or did he have his eyes on Flair's position at the top? Wrestling promoters recognized the natural tension developing and began planting the seeds for what would become one of the most significant storylines in NWA history. The cracks in the Horsemen's unity became more apparent week by week. Small misunderstandings escalated into visible frustration. Flair's flamboyant personality and championship status meant he received the lion's share of attention, something that didn't sit well with the increasingly confident Luger. The breaking point came in dramatic fashion in 1988. During a championship cage match, the Horsemen turned on Luger in one of wrestling's most memorable betrayals. The attack transformed Luger overnight from villain to hero, as fans rallied behind the man who had stood up to the arrogant Horseman. No longer the muscle behind Flair, Luger emerged as a legitimate main event star in his own right. one with a ready-made rivalry against the most hated group in wrestling. The fans rallied behind Luger after his split from the Four Horsemen, but nobody could have predicted what would follow. Despite having everything a champion should possess, the size, the look, the fan support, Luger's career would become defined by something that defied logic, an uncanny ability to come up short when the world title was within his grasp. As 1988 rolled into 1989, Luger found himself in the spotlight as Ric Flair's primary challenger. Their rivalry electrified arenas, with the total package portrayed as the physical superior who could dethrone wrestling's nature boy. Match after match, Luger dominated physically, tossing Flair around like a rag doll, applying his devastating torture rack with precision, and whipping crowds into a frenzy as they chanted his name and pounded the railings in anticipation. But then, the pattern would emerge. A referee distraction, a missed opportunity, a sudden reversal. Somehow, Flair would escape with his title intact, leaving fans slumped in their seats in disbelief. "I thought this was finally it," one fan famously shouted after their Clash of the Champions match, where Luger had Flair beaten for a solid 3 count before the referee revealed he'd been knocked out of position. Behind the curtain, WCW bookers deliberately crafted Luger as the eternal challenger, someone powerful enough to seem like a threat but who would never quite reach the championship. This booking strategy kept ticket sales strong while preserving Flair's position atop the company, but it came with a personal cost. Backstage, Luger grew increasingly frustrated with his role as perpetual runner-up, reportedly confronting management about his career trajectory, while fans continued to invest in his seemingly endless chase. At first, fans accepted this as part of the storyline. After all, the pursuit is often more exciting than the victory itself. But as opportunities continued slipping through Luger's muscular fingers, audiences developed a peculiar relationship with his matches. "Here comes the screw job," fans would mutter to each other as Luger gained momentum. The Luger paradox took shape. A wrestling superstar with all the tools who couldn't seal the deal when championships were on the line. When Luger finally captured the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in 1991, the victory felt empty. His championship to the WWF. Luger wasn't defeating his longtime nemesis. He was filling a vacancy. Even during his championship celebration, fans held signs asking, "Where's Flair?" rather than celebrating the new champion. His lukewarm championship reign lasted just months before the title changed hands again. The company never fully committed to Luger, treating him as a transitional champion rather than their standard bearer. This reinforced the growing belief that despite his imposing physique, Luger wasn't true championship material. The disconnect fascinated wrestling observers. How could someone who looked so much like a champion consistently fail to be one? While Luger collected United States championships with ease, he struggled with the top prize. This created an invisible ceiling just above the secondary championship level, one that Luger could touch but never break through. Critics labeled him a choke artist, suggesting that despite his physical gifts, he lacked something essential that separates good wrestlers from great champions. This reputation was cemented during the infamous Lex Express campaign in WWF, when after months of promotion building toward a championship match against Yokozuna at SummerSlam 1993, Luger won only by countout. The WWF inexplicably staged a celebration with balloons and confetti for a wrestler who had technically lost. Confused fans watched as red, white, and blue streamers rained down, further damaging Luger's credibility. The pattern repeated so often it became impossible to ignore, creating a legacy that follows him today. The physical marvel who looked unbeatable but couldn't win when it mattered most. A cautionary tale in wrestling. Looking like a champion doesn't automatically make you one. By early 1992, Lex Luger found himself standing at a career crossroads. Despite his impressive physique and multiple championship runs in WCW, he sensed he had hit his ceiling. The endless cycle of almost but not quite winning the big one had left him frustrated. With backstage turmoil increasing in WCW and his career momentum stalling, Luger made the decision that would fundamentally alter his wrestling identity. He jumped ship to Vince McMahon's WWF. This transition came with a heavy price. Luger agreed to a full-year non-compete clause that completely sidelined him from wrestling during what should have been his prime years. The move represented more than a company change. It was a desperate gamble for career renewal after years of stagnation. McMahon planned to utilize Luger's impressive physique in his World Bodybuilding Federation while waiting out the wrestling restriction. But life had other plans. A devastating motorcycle accident in June 1992 derailed even this temporary solution, leaving Luger injured and without direction as the WBF itself collapsed shortly after. When Luger finally appeared on WWF television in early 1993, the transformation was jarring. The straightforward power athlete had a man utterly consumed by his own reflection. After waiting a year and investing millions to acquire this superstar, the WWF's grand vision was turning Luger into wrestling's embodiment of vanity. His entrance evolved into theatrical self-worship. Multiple full-length mirrors lined the entrance ramp like shrines to his ego, with Luger stopping at each one as if performing a ritual of self-adoration. He'd flex and admire himself with exaggerated expressions of pleasure, transforming what was once a simple walk to the ring into a spectacle of self-obsession. Each mirror became a stage where he performed not for the audience but for himself. This elaborate character was a complete reversal of his WCW persona. The total package had transformed into the total narcissist, shifting focus from in-ring dominance to superficial appearance. Even his entrance music featured the sound of shattering glass, broken mirrors symbolizing the destruction of his former self and the birth of this new, vain creation. The WWF matched Luger against technical masters like Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart. While these matches showcased his abilities as a heel performer, the audience response remained tepid. Despite quality in-ring work, something crucial was missing in the connection between Luger and the fans. This disconnect was particularly puzzling given the investment the company had made. The WWF was navigating troubled waters during this period. Hulk Hogan's departure had created a star power vacuum, and a steroid scandal had rocked the foundations of the business. Luger, despite his impressive credentials, seemed caught in the uncertainty of this transitional era. Behind the scenes, the company struggled to redefine itself. The steroid scandal placed Luger's physique-focused character in an awkward position, simultaneously an asset and a potential liability. The shifting landscape of professional wrestling worked against the very gimmick they had created for him. After just 6 months, the WWF abandoned the narcissist character entirely. The mirrors disappeared, the self-admiration routine vanished, and plans formed for yet another complete reinvention. This rapid pivot revealed the company's recognition of failure. Despite all the planning and investment, Luger's character had failed to connect with audiences. But this abandonment wasn't the end for Luger in the WWF. It was merely setting the stage for his most dramatic transformation yet, one that would push him toward the pinnacle of the company in ways nobody could have predicted. The transformation of Lex Luger from preening narcissist to all-American hero happened on a single, pivotal day that would alter the trajectory of his career. On July 4, 1993, as thousands of fans gathered aboard the USS Intrepid in New York Harbor, they witnessed something unprecedented: the manufacturing of patriotism in real time. The scene was meticulously choreographed. WWF champion Yokozuna, portrayed as a villainous foreign threat, had issued an open challenge to any American athlete brave enough to attempt to body slam his 500-pound frame. After several celebrities and athletes failed, Luger dramatically arrived via helicopter. The crowd roared as he stepped onto the deck in his Stars and Stripes t-shirt. Within moments, he accomplished what seemed impossible, hoisting Yokozuna's massive frame and slamming him to the mat as fans erupted in patriotic fervor. In that moment, the narcissistic villain was erased from existence. In his place stood America's new wrestling hero, custom-built to fill the patriotic void left by Hulk Hogan's departure. The transformation was instant, complete, and entirely manufactured. What followed was the most expensive promotional campaign for a single wrestler in the company's history. The WWF unveiled the Lex Express, a red, white, and blue tour bus emblazoned with Luger's image that would carry him across America on a patriotic crusade. This wasn't just a wrestling angle. It was a full-blown marketing blitz, attempting to create an instant American icon. The schedule crushed Luger physically and mentally. For 6 straight weeks, he endured marathon days, traveling upwards of 16 hours between cities. Shopping malls, media outlets, tourist attractions. The bus stopped everywhere. Autograph sessions blended into radio interviews, which melted into promotional appearances. The campaign tested his endurance more severely than any match could. But a strange disconnect emerged during this massive tour. Luger barely wrestled at all. While being positioned as the company's next great champion, he participated in remarkably few matches. His last actual match before SummerSlam was against Bret Hart on July 10th, followed only by a practice bout with Yokozuna on August 23rd. He had become a wrestling superstar who wasn't actually wrestling. The WWF's approach revealed their desperation to recreate the Hulk Hogan formula that had propelled the company to mainstream success in the 1980s. Luger now entered arenas to Stars and Stripes forever, wore American flag-themed ring gear, and posed with the same red and yellow color scheme that had been Hogan's trademark. The message couldn't have been clearer. Accept this new patriotic hero as Hogan's replacement. As SummerSlam 1993 approached, the hype reached fever pitch. Would this massive investment pay off? The WWF positioned the event as Luger's coronation, the moment when their new American hero would vanquish the foreign threat and capture wrestling's biggest prize. Then came the shocking decision that would haunt Luger's WWF career forever. After all the build-up, all the investment, all the manufactured patriotism, Luger defeated Yokozuna. By submission, by countout, meaning he won the match but ultimately failed. What happened next only amplified the bewilderment. Despite failing to capture the championship, Luger was showered with confetti and balloons in a celebratory scene typically reserved for new champions. Commentator Vince McMahon enthusiastically proclaimed Luger's victory, creating a surreal disconnect between what fans had witnessed and how it was being presented. "Look at the celebration. Lex Luger has conquered Yokozuna," McMahon exclaimed, while the reality was starkly different. Luger had received his one guaranteed title failure, a championship moment that never actually happened. The decision to have Luger win by countout was reportedly made to prolong the feud, but the damage was immediate and irreversible. The gap between the massive promotional investment and the underwhelming payoff created a credibility problem that Luger would never overcome with WWF audiences. Wrestling fans, even with their willingness to suspend disbelief, recognized the fundamental mistake in the storytelling. You don't spend millions of dollars, travel thousands of miles, and create months of nationwide hype only to deliver a technical victory with no championship change. The celebration of mediocrity undermined everything the Lex Express campaign had attempted to build. While the confetti from Luger's hollow victory was still being swept away, behind the scenes, a revolution was brewing. As the Lex Express campaign faded into memory, the wrestling industry was silently preparing for war. What if I told you that the man who couldn't deliver for the WWF would soon deliver the most devastating blow in the history of the Monday Night Wars? One surprise appearance, lasting less than 2 minutes, would transform Lex Luger from failed patriot to industry game-changer. By 1995, Luger's star had fallen dramatically in the WWF. The company that once sent him cross-country on a customized bus had relegated him to the tag team division, pairing him with the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. No more pyrotechnics, no more American flags, no more championship opportunities. Just another mid-card talent filling out the roster. As his WWF contract neared its end, Luger did something unprecedented. He began secret negotiations with WCW while still actively competing for the WWF. On September 3, 1995, Lex Luger wrestled a house show match in New York, teaming with the British Bulldog against the Heavenly Bodies. Nothing special, nothing memorable. Luger simply collected his paycheck and vanished into the night, leaving no hint of what was about to unfold. Then came the moment that changed wrestling forever. The very next evening, September 4, 1995, Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling launched Monday Nitro, a direct competitor to WWF's Monday Night Raw. Broadcasting live from the Mall of America in Minneapolis, the show was already making history. Suddenly, midway through the program, the crowd fell into stunned silence before erupting in disbelief, jumped from their seats in shock. No warning, no announcement, no legal buffer period between companies. Like a chess grandmaster's unexpected move, Luger's appearance changed the entire game board. The established rules of professional wrestling had been completely shattered. This wasn't just a wrestler changing employers, this was warfare. The implications reverberated throughout the industry immediately. If a major WWF star could appear on WCW television without warning, who else might jump ship? The message was clear. WCW wasn't just competing with the WWF. They were willing to shock, to disrupt, to play by new rules. In the emerging Monday Night Wars, this was the first major shot fired. For Luger personally, the move represented a career resurrection. Almost overnight, he transformed from yesterday's news to today's headline. WCW immediately positioned him in a prominent role, reuniting him with his longtime friend Sting. Their alliance became a cornerstone of WCW programming during a crucial transition period for the company. When the New World Order storyline began in 1996, with Hulk Hogan's shocking heel turn and alliance with outsiders Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, Luger occupied a fascinating middle ground. Unlike most WCW wrestlers who either fought against the NWO or eventually joined them, Luger maintained an ambiguous position. He wasn't fully trusted by WCW loyalists, yet he fought against the NWO invasion. This unique positioning kept fans guessing about his true allegiances, adding layers to a character that had often been criticized for being one-dimensional. The pinnacle of Luger's WCW return came on August 4, 1997, in Daytona Beach, Florida. On that night's episode of Monday Nitro, Luger achieved what many thought impossible. He defeated Hollywood Hogan for the WCW World Championship. As Luger applied his torture rack submission hold and Hogan submitted, the arena erupted. For a brief, shining moment, the total package had reached the absolute summit of his profession. But true to form, Luger's moment of glory proved fleeting. Just 13 days later, at Road Wild, he lost the championship back to Hogan. His reign became merely another example of Luger's inability to maintain momentum at the highest level. This period from 1995 to 1997 represented Luger's final run as a genuine main event performer. While he would remain an important figure in WCW for several more years, his position gradually declined as the company's creative direction became increasingly chaotic. The cameras captured Lex Luger's professional decline, but they didn't show the true collapse happening away from the spotlight. When WCW folded in 2001, the structure holding Luger's fragile world together disappeared with it. And within just 2 years, a tragedy would shock the entire wrestling world. For nearly 20 years, Lex Luger had lived with the routine and validation of professional wrestling. The roar of the crowd, the adrenaline of competition, and the camaraderie of the locker room had been constants in his life. When Ted Turner's wrestling empire crumbled, Luger faced something more challenging than any opponent in the ring: a life without direction or purpose. "Wrestling was all I knew," Luger later admitted in interviews. "When that was gone, I felt like my identity was gone with it." In this vacuum, his relationship with Elizabeth Hewlett, known to wrestling fans as Miss Elizabeth, became his anchor. They had begun working together in WCW, where Elizabeth had been a manager and on-screen personality. After her divorce from Randy Savage, their professional connection evolved into a personal relationship as they both navigated the uncertain waters of post-WCW existence. The pressures mounted quickly. Maintaining a wrestler's physique without the structure of a major promotion pushed Luger toward substance abuse. Elizabeth, too, struggled with the adjustment. "We were like two drowning people trying to save each other," Luger would later reflect in his autobiography. Their relationship deteriorated rapidly. On April 19, 2003, police responded to their shared townhouse in Marietta, Georgia. The scene was alarming. Elizabeth with visible injuries, and Luger, once celebrated for his heroic persona, arrested for battery. The former champion who had battled Hulk Hogan was now fighting demons far more dangerous than any ring opponent. Just 3 days after the domestic violence incident, while driving through Cobb County, Luger rear-ended another vehicle. Police discovered him driving with a suspended license and carrying a handgun. This second arrest in less than a week revealed a man spiraling completely out of control. The tragic climax came on May 1, 2003. Emergency services responded to a frantic call from their Marietta townhouse. Responders found Elizabeth unconscious. Despite their efforts, she was pronounced dead after being rushed to a nearby hospital at just 42 years old. The wrestling world reeled from the shock. Next up, Sid Vicious. Sid Vicious was one of wrestling's most intimidating giants, whose unhinged character and explosive power moves made him a two-time champion in both WWE and WCW. However, in 1993, a brutal hotel room fight left Arn Anderson stabbed with scissors and Sid himself bleeding from multiple wounds, forever altering his career trajectory. This shocking, violent incident is just one piece of the puzzle in understanding Sid Vicious, the legend who WWE has mysteriously blackballed from the Hall of Fame. In 1960, Sidney Raymond Vicious entered the world in rural Arkansas. Those early years shaped not just the man, but the monster who would later dominate wrestling rings across America. Growing up on an Arkansas farm forged Sid through physical labor. Day after day, farm life sculpted his frame naturally. He hauled, lifted, and worked from sunrise to sunset, building what would become one of wrestling's most impressive physiques through practical work rather than through gyms or trainers. By adulthood, Sid towered at 6'9", the kind of height that commands attention wherever you go. But what makes Sid's story truly fascinating is how dramatically different his path was from most wrestling superstars of his era. While future legends like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart grew up idolizing wrestlers and dreaming of the ring, Sid had absolutely no interest in professional wrestling. None. Zero. For most of his early adult life, becoming a wrestler never crossed his mind. He didn't collect wrestling figures, didn't watch matches on TV, didn't practice moves with his friends. Wrestling simply wasn't on his radar. This complete indifference makes the story of his wrestling discovery all the more remarkable. According to Sid himself, he was just working out at a local gym when fate stepped in, wearing neon fringe and sunglasses. The legendary Macho Man Randy Savage spotted him across the weight room, approached this imposing figure, and asked point-blank if he'd ever considered wrestling professionally. But wrestling stories often come with contradictions, and this origin tale is no exception. Lanny Poffo, Randy Savage's brother, remembers a completely different scenario. In Poffo's version, Sid actively sought out his opportunity, approaching Poffo at a Memphis wrestling show and directly asking how to break into the business. Two entirely different accounts of the same pivotal moment. Was Sid discovered while minding his own business, or did he deliberately seek his opportunity? We may never know the truth, but what's clear is that Sid's entry into wrestling wasn't driven by passion or childhood dreams. His motivation was purely practical. When his wife became pregnant, Sid needed steady income, and he needed it quickly. As he bluntly put it, "My wife got pregnant, and it sounded like I could get into that making more a little bit faster. No romantic notions about artistic expression. Just a tall guy with bills to pay and a baby on the way." This pragmatic approach distinguished Sid from the beginning. While many wrestlers speak of sacrificing everything for their love of the business, Sid viewed wrestling exactly as it was: a job. A way to provide for his family that happened to pay better than his alternatives. That doesn't mean he didn't work hard. Early footage shows a raw but captivating presence. During one of his first televised matches in Continental Championship Wrestling, Sid manhandled his opponent with such convincing power that fans at ringside visibly recoiled. Even as a rookie, he moved with an athleticism that belied his massive frame. Opponents looked genuinely intimidated, and for good reason. His natural gifts allowed rapid progression despite his late start. While other newcomers struggled for years in obscurity, promoters immediately recognized Sid's potential. That imposing presence and natural athleticism couldn't be taught, and you can almost see the wheels turning in promoters' minds as they watched his early matches. His quick rise created resentment among wrestlers who had paid their dues through years of low-paying matches. But Sid wasn't concerned with the traditional path or pleasing the locker room. He focused on maximizing his earning potential in the shortest time possible. This business-first mentality defined Sid's entire career. While others became entangled in creative politics, Sid consistently made decisions based on one factor: which option would put the most money in his pocket. In an industry notorious for exploiting performers, Sid's approach was refreshingly self-protective. He understood his value in a business where size and presence were premium commodities. If a promotion wasn't offering what he felt he was worth, he walked away, displaying rare leverage in a business where most wrestlers feared unemployment above all. The irony? Sid's lack of childhood wrestling fandom became his greatest asset. Without rose-colored glasses, he saw the business clearly for what it was: a business. He wasn't blinded by glory or trapped by dreams of legacy. He was there to get paid, and this clarity guided every career decision. This mindset helped him navigate the cutthroat wrestling world effectively. While many peers ended up broken, Sid's pragmatism protected both his finances and physical well-being. He knew when to push for more and when to walk away. His rapid ascent is remarkable considering his complete lack of passion for wrestling. While technical wizards like Bret Hart spent decades perfecting their craft, Sid reached comparable success with raw presence and business savvy alone. In less than 2 years from his debut, he commanded a major promotion salary most veterans only dreamed of. Throughout his career, this practical approach led to both his greatest successes and most controversial moments. Sid never pretended to be what he wasn't: a wrestling purist or a company man. He was a businessman in a business often pretending to be something else. For a man with no wrestling passion, Sid's first character required him to become completely unrecognizable. Continental Championship Wrestling didn't introduce the world to Sid Udy. They unleashed Lord Humongous, a hockey-masked monster straight from apocalyptic cinema. This inspired choice to hide their physically impressive new talent behind a mask was wrestling genius at its most practical. When Sid stepped into the ring as Lord Humongous in 1987, few realized they were witnessing the birth of a future world champion. The character, shamelessly stolen from the film Mad Max 2. The Road Warrior featured Sid in a hockey mask, studded leather outfit, and carrying a chain. This mask became a veil that concealed both his identity and his vulnerabilities, allowing his imposing physicality to speak where his experience couldn't. The brilliance of the Lord Humongous gimmick was twofold. First, it completely concealed Sid's identity, allowing him to make rookie mistakes without damaging his future marketability. Second, it capitalized on his intimidating physical attributes while minimizing the need for technical wrestling proficiency. Fans didn't expect a complex wrestling match from a post-apocalyptic madman. They wanted destruction. Behind that mask, something remarkable was happening. Despite his raw inexperience, Sid was already displaying the physical presence that would define his career. His movements were limited but impactful. His offense was basic but believable. Most importantly, even beneath layers of costume, you couldn't hide that imposing 6'9" frame that moved with surprising athleticism for someone so large. The Lord Humongous character worked because it emphasized Sid's natural strengths. The mask and minimal speaking requirements focused audience attention entirely on his intimidating presence. He wasn't expected to deliver technical masterpieces. He was there to dominate. This formula of presence over technique would become the blueprint for his entire career. Continental Championship Wrestling operated primarily in Alabama and the surrounding Southern Territories, far from the national spotlight of WWF or even the regional power of Jim Crockett Promotions. This smaller territory provided the ideal environment for Sid to develop his skills away from mainstream scrutiny. Here, he could work matches against experienced veterans who could guide him through the fundamentals while teaching him how to maximize his obvious physical gifts. Sid's development took an unexpected international turn when he toured with New Japan Pro Wrestling as Vicious Warrior. This overseas excursion transformed his trajectory, as New Japan specifically groomed him to be the next Bruiser Brody, one of the most feared and respected gaijin, foreign wrestlers in Japanese history. The Bruiser Brody comparison was no accident. Brody had built his legendary status through his wild, brawling style and intimidating presence rather than technical wrestling excellence. This blueprint provided the perfect developmental path for Sid, reinforcing that his imposing size and menacing demeanor could be more valuable than complex wrestling maneuvers. These international tours forged crucial dimensions in Sid's arsenal. Japanese wrestling's stiffer style hardened his strikes, adding credibility to his offense. The grueling tour schedule built his conditioning and durability. Most significantly, exposure to Japanese psychology taught him how to maximize impact with minimal movement. A lesson that would pay dividends throughout his career as he moved between American promotions with different stylistic expectations. Back in America, Sid evolved into Sid Vicious in world-class championship wrestling, borrowing from the infamous Sex Pistols bassist. This name change marked his emergence from behind the mask, developing a character with an edge of unpredictability and danger that matched his intimidating look. The Sid Vicious identity accomplished something crucial. It provided a persona that could travel between promotions and territories. Unlike Lord Humongous, which was tied to a specific visual presentation, Sid Vicious could evolve and adapt. This flexibility would prove valuable as Sid navigated between major promotions throughout his career. These early character iterations established the template that would carry Sid to multiple world championships. From Lord Humongous to Vicious Warrior to Sid Vicious, each character emphasized intimidation and power. His formative experiences across different territories and countries taught Sid exactly where his value lay in the wrestling industry. These smaller territories served as the perfect incubator for Sid's developing persona. Unlike today's wrestlers who often debut on national television with minimal experience, Sid benefited from this more traditional path. Continental Championship Wrestling and his international tours kept him hidden from mainstream audiences while he learned his craft, preventing fans from witnessing his inevitable rookie mistakes. This strategic development was far from accidental. Wrestling promoters have long understood that giants require special handling. For every Undertaker who succeeds on the biggest stage, countless other big men fail because they're exposed too early. By keeping Sid in smaller territories and behind masks, promoters protected their investment while giving him time to develop the fundamentals. The wrestling business has always excelled at maximizing assets. In Sid, they had a physical specimen with natural charisma and intimidating presence, but limited technical ability and experience. The solution? Create characters that emphasized his strengths and masked his weaknesses. Lord Humongous couldn't execute a perfect armbar, but he didn't need to. He just needed to look terrifying and hit hard. By the time Sid was ready for national exposure, he had internalized the most important lesson for someone of his size. Wrestling didn't need to be complex to be effective. His early characters had taught him that presence, intensity, and a few devastating power moves could carry him further than technical excellence ever would. This formula would propel him to championship glory across his career. National exposure was calling, and in 1989, Sid answered by joining WCW as one half of the Skyscrapers, a tag team so physically imposing that promoters practically salivated at their potential. Standing nearly 7 feet tall alongside Dan Spivey, the duo created an instant visual impact that few tag teams in wrestling history could match. When these twin towers entered the ring, announcers would frantically emphasize their combined height of almost 14 feet, making them look like giants compared to most of their opponents. The Skyscrapers demolished jobbers with ruthless efficiency, showcasing their raw power and intimidation factor. Television audiences quickly took notice of these behemoths, who tossed grown men around the ring like rag dolls. With their matching black tights and boots, they presented a unified front of destruction that positioned them for a major push up the card. WCW executives capitalized on their towering presence. In an era where size reigned supreme, they had secured two massive specimens who could credibly challenge any team in the company. Their push followed a calculated blueprint. Squash matches built their credibility while protecting them from potential in-ring weaknesses. For Sid specifically, this partnership provided the perfect vehicle to showcase his intimidating presence without exposing his limited experience. The Skyscrapers' impressive foundation began to crumble during a high-profile match against the Steiner brothers at the November 1989 Clash of the Champions event. Sid suffered a punctured lung and broken rib, legitimate injuries that immediately halted the team's momentum and sidelined him when championship gold seemed inevitable. During his recovery period, a career-defining pattern emerged. Rumors circulated that Sid had been spotted playing softball, his true passion, while supposedly too injured to perform in the ring. This information reached WCW management, particularly Booker Ole Anderson, who viewed this behavior as a cardinal sin against wrestling's unwritten code of paying dues. The consequences materialized when Sid returned 7 months later. Like a skyscraper suddenly missing its structural support, his carefully constructed character came crashing down. In what many insiders considered deliberate punishment, Sid was booked to lose to Lex Luger in a shocking 26 seconds. For a performer of Sid's stature and previous push, this kind of squash match was practically unheard of. Big men in wrestling were typically protected at all costs. The message from management was clear. Softball might be your passion, but wrestling pays your bills, and disrespect won't be tolerated. Despite this humbling return, Sid's commanding presence proved too valuable to ignore in the star-hungry wrestling landscape of 1990. In one of wrestling's most unexpected developments, Sid found himself inducted into the prestigious Four Horsemen faction, widely considered wrestling's most elite stable. Alongside the legendary Ric Flair, Sid served as the group's intimidating enforcer, a role that elevated his status virtually overnight. Joining the Four Horsemen was comparable to a rookie basketball player being drafted directly onto the Dream Team. This faction represented excellence in professional wrestling, typically reserved for the most talented performers in the business. Sid's inclusion spoke volumes about how management viewed his potential despite the softball incident. Under the Horsemen's banner, Sid's profile rose dramatically. The association with Flair, arguably the greatest wrestler of all time, gave him instant credibility, while the stable's heel alignment perfectly suited his intimidating demeanor. This connection culminated in a main event match against Sting for the World Heavyweight Championship at Halloween Havoc 1990, representing Sid's first significant singles push on a major stage. Though he didn't capture the championship that night, Sid's position seemed secure. As a member of wrestling's most prestigious faction, working main events against the company's top star, conventional wisdom suggested Sid was being groomed for a long-term position near the top of the card. The foundation was being laid for what should have been a lucrative, stable career in a major promotion. Yet behind the scenes, the business-minded Sid was already looking at other options. Despite his strong position in the Four Horsemen, he had begun negotiating with WWF, WCW's larger competitor. When presented with more lucrative financial terms and promises of main event positioning, Sid made a decision that reflected his pragmatic approach to the business. He chose the bigger payday and the bigger stage, walking away from what many wrestlers would consider a dream position alongside Flair. This decision perfectly illustrated the fundamental difference between Sid and many of his peers. While countless wrestlers would have sacrificed short-term financial gain for the prestige of remaining with the Horsemen, Sid's approach remained consistent with how he entered the business, as a financial opportunity rather than a lifelong passion. When a better opportunity presented itself, loyalty to WCW or the Horsemen faction meant little compared to securing his financial future. For WCW executives who had invested in building Sid's character and position, his departure represented a significant loss. They had pushed him into one of the company's most prestigious spots only to watch him walk away for competitor money. This pattern of choosing immediate financial gain over long-term position building would become a hallmark of Sid's career approach, for better or worse. Looking back, this early WCW run established the blueprint for Sid's entire career trajectory. He would repeatedly reach heights that seemed to position him for long-term main event success, only for circumstances, sometimes self-inflicted, sometimes not, to interrupt that momentum. The meteoric rise followed by unexpected departure would become a recurring theme across his wrestling journey. When Vince McMahon needed a physically imposing hero to stand alongside Hulk Hogan in the summer of 1991, he turned to the most unlikely candidate imaginable, a 6'9" monster who looked like he'd sooner eat children than protect them. The WWF wasted no time transforming Sid Vicious into Sid Justice, with the name itself promising fairness while his towering frame promised anything but. This jarring character pivot would kick off one of wrestling's strangest career chapters, setting Sid on a trajectory that would lead from referee to WrestleMania main eventer to softball enthusiast. Sid made his WWF debut in spectacular fashion, serving as the special referee at SummerSlam 1991. Standing between Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior as they faced off against the Triangle of Terror, Sergeant Slaughter, Colonel Mustafa, and General Adnan, Sid instantly established himself as a physically dominant force aligned with the promotion's top heroes. The crowd responded positively, but something felt off about this arrangement from day one. Everything about Sid screamed villain. His imposing size, intimidating gaze, and barely contained aggression contradicted his role as a smiling, rule-enforcing good guy. The WWF might as well have tried turning Freddy Krueger into a kindergarten teacher. Wrestling audiences can suspend their disbelief for many things: undead morticians, snake handlers, and garbage men turned wrestlers. But a menacing giant playing against type-stretched credibility to its breaking point. The 1992 Royal Rumble provided the perfect opportunity to course correct. During the climactic moments, Sid eliminated the beloved Hulk Hogan, leading to a memorable confrontation that set up his long-overdue heel turn. The crowd's reaction told the story. This was the role Sid was born to play. The elimination felt natural because audiences already sensed the villain lurking beneath the hero's veneer. This heel turn led directly to one of the most controversial booking decisions of the early 1990s. The original plan for WrestleMania VIII had been a dream match between Hulk Hogan and the newly arrived Ric Flair, a confrontation fans had anticipated for years. Instead, the WWF pivoted to Hogan versus Sid Justice in the main event, a decision that left many fans disappointed before the match even happened. While Sid was physically impressive and generated solid heat as a villain, he simply wasn't Ric Flair. Wrestling fans who had waited years for the Hogan-Flair showdown on the grandest stage felt shortchanged. Through no fault of his own, Sid was positioned as the disappointing alternative to the match everyone actually wanted to see. When WrestleMania VIII finally arrived on April 5, 1992, at the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, the Hogan-Sid main event was already fighting an uphill battle. Would the match deliver enough action to overcome the pre-show disappointment? Could Sid cement himself as a worthy WrestleMania headliner? The match itself was serviceable if unspectacular. Exactly what you'd expect from a Hulk Hogan match of the era, with plenty of power moves but limited technical wrestling. But what about the finish? After Hogan hit his signature leg drop finisher, Sid kicked out at the last possible moment, 2.9 seconds into the count. The problem? The referee counted to 3 anyway, creating a botched finish that left everyone confused. Fans in the arena could clearly see Sid's shoulder up before the 3 count, but the match was called in Hogan's favor regardless. The botched finish created an awkward moment that perfectly encapsulated Sid's run in the company, something that should have worked on paper but somehow went sideways in execution. Behind the scenes, the situation was even messier. Around WrestleMania time, Sid had failed a drug test under the company's substance abuse policy, adding another complication to his already troubled run. In a decision that revealed much about the WWF's selective enforcement of its own policies, the company allowed Sid to work both WrestleMania and the subsequent European tour before serving his suspension. This arrangement highlights how differently the rules were applied to main event talent versus mid-card performers, especially during this era. What happened next would establish Sid's reputation for making unexpected career decisions. Rather than serve his suspension and return to what was still a prominent position in the company, Sid quit the WWF altogether. His reason? Softball. In one of wrestling's most unusual career priorities, Sid chose returning to his recreational softball league over continuing his main event run in the world's largest wrestling promotion. This decision seems incomprehensible to most wrestling fans who couldn't imagine anyone walking away from a WrestleMania main event position to play amateur sports. But for Sid, who had always viewed wrestling primarily as a money-making venture rather than a passion, the decision made perfect sense. The softball decision perfectly illustrated the fundamental difference between Sid and most of his colleagues. While other wrestlers would sacrifice everything for a main event spot, Sid repeatedly demonstrated that wrestling was simply a job to him, one he was willing to walk away from when it no longer suited his lifestyle or priorities. What makes this career detour even more remarkable is that Sid was scheduled to enter a significant program with the Ultimate Warrior upon his return from suspension. This wasn't a case of a wrestler being pushed down the card. Sid was walking away from a guaranteed high-profile position that most wrestlers would have killed for. In interviews years later, Sid would attribute his departure to multiple factors beyond just softball. He expressed frustration with the direction of his character and acknowledged that the failed drug test had complicated his standing in the company. But regardless of the full reasoning, the abrupt nature of his exit became yet another chapter in his increasingly unpredictable career narrative. While softball might seem like the strangest chapter in Sid's career, it pales in comparison to what happened in a Blackburn, England hotel room in 1993. 24 stab wounds, 2 bleeding wrestlers, and a championship opportunity that would vanish in a pool of blood. The infamous scissors incident became the night Sid Vicious nearly became a murderer. After his abrupt WWF departure, Sid found himself back in WCW in 1993. This time, he arrived with a new presentation as the mystery client of flamboyant manager Colonel Robert Parker. The promotion quickly paired him with the monstrous Vader to form one of wrestling's most physically intimidating tag teams, the aptly named Masters of the Powerbomb. With 2 of wrestling's most imposing figures destroying opponents with devastating powerbombs, WCW seemed to have a winning formula on their hands. Behind the scenes, the company had even bigger plans for Sid. Television tapings had already recorded promotional footage showing Sid as the World Heavyweight Champion, strongly indicating that WCW was positioning him to defeat Vader for the title at their biggest event of the year, Starrcade 1993. After years of starting and stopping pushes across multiple companies, Sid was finally on the verge of a sustained run at the very top of a major promotion. But everything would unravel during a seemingly routine European tour in October 1993. The evening started innocently enough at the hotel bar where the wrestlers were staying. 2 Cold Scorpio, who witnessed the events, later recounted how Sid and respected veteran Arn Anderson began discussing WCW's direction. Sid was saying how the company needed to push the big guys more, Scorpio recalled. Arn was defending the old-school workers who could actually wrestle. As the night wore on and alcohol flowed, the conversation grew increasingly heated. What started as professional disagreement turned personal. "You're just jealous they're grooming me for the title," Sid reportedly sneered. "You'll never be half the worker some of us are," Anderson fired back. When other wrestlers couldn't defuse the tension, both men eventually returned to their separate hotel rooms. The argument should have ended there. It didn't. According to multiple accounts, Sid later approached Anderson's room, pounding on the door. "We're not done talking," he shouted through the door. When Anderson opened it, the verbal confrontation quickly escalated. "I heard shouting, then crashes, then screaming," one wrestler who requested anonymity told reporters later. "By the time we got there was blood everywhere." Hotel room scissors, the kind typically found alongside the stationary and complementary pens, became weapons in one of wrestling's most notorious real-life fights. In the chaotic struggle that followed, Anderson suffered approximately 20 stab wounds, while Sid himself was stabbed 4 times. The hotel hallway became a bloody crime scene as other wrestlers and road agents rushed to separate the men. Medical personnel were called immediately, and both required hospital treatment. According to those present, if the fight hadn't been broken up when it was, the outcome could have been fatal. WCW executives faced an immediate crisis. The company was in the middle of an international tour with 2 top stars now hospitalized. Their initial response was attempting to keep the incident quiet, difficult in wrestling's gossip-heavy culture. Word spread quickly through the locker room. According to wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer's reporting, many wrestlers threatened to walk out if Sid wasn't immediately fired. The scissors incident had crossed a line that even the often lawless wrestling business couldn't ignore. Neither Sid nor Anderson wanted to remain in England for the 90-day period required for a full criminal investigation. With both parties unwilling to press charges and eager to return to the United States for medical treatment, no criminal prosecution took place. The incident remained strictly a matter for WCW's internal discipline. The company made their decision. Sid was released from his contract. His planned championship victory at Starrcade 1993 was scrapped, along with all promotional materials showing him as champion. Next up, Randy Savage. Randy Savage was one of wrestling's most charismatic superstars, whose flamboyant outfits and explosive intensity made him a cultural icon beyond the wrestling world. He went from being a minor league baseball player to becoming the Macho Man, capturing multiple championships while his relationship with Miss Elizabeth became wrestling's greatest love story. However, rumors of an inappropriate relationship with a teenage Stephanie McMahon would allegedly change everything for the Macho Man. In 2011, at 58 years old, the Macho Man would suffer a heart attack while driving, crashing his car in what would be his final tragic curtain call. But one question remains unanswered. Why was Randy Savage never mentioned in WWE for more than 20 years? In 1952, Randy Mario Poffo was born in Columbus, Ohio. His father, Angelo Poffo, was already making a name for himself as a professional wrestler in the 1950s and 1960s. His mother, Judith, was Jewish American, and Randy was raised Catholic in a household where wrestling was just part of everyday life. But Randy had different plans. Despite growing up around the wrestling business, he chose baseball as his first love. The St. Louis Cardinals signed him straight out of high school in 1971. And suddenly, Randy found himself living the dream that millions of kids could only imagine. He was a talented outfielder with real potential, the kind of player who could make scouts take notice. When he injured his shoulder, he didn't give up. Instead, he taught himself to throw left-handed, showing the determination that would later define his wrestling career. Randy's minor league career took him through the Cardinals organization and later the Cincinnati Reds system. He spent his days traveling from town to town, playing in small stadiums for crowds that barely filled the bleachers. The minor leagues in the early 1970s were a grind. Players made almost nothing, maybe a few $100s a month during the season. Most had to find other work during the off-season just to survive. The dream of making it to the majors kept everyone going, but the reality was harsh. Only a tiny percentage of minor leaguers ever saw a major league stadium as anything more than a fan. This athletic background gave Randy advantages that most wrestlers never had. His hand-eye coordination was exceptional from years of tracking fly balls and line drives. His conditioning came from running bases and playing 140 games a season. He understood the mental pressure of performing in front of crowds, even small ones. Baseball had taught him how to handle failure, because even the best hitters fail 7 times out of 10. These skills would prove crucial when he eventually stepped into wrestling rings where split-second timing could mean the difference between a great match and a dangerous botch. Growing up as Angelo Poffo's son meant wrestling was never really foreign to Randy. He'd seen his father's matches, met other wrestlers, and understood the business side of the sport. Angelo was working territories across the Midwest, building his reputation as a tough, reliable performer. Randy watched how his father handled promoters, how he developed his character, and how he connected with audiences. This early exposure gave him insights that other wrestlers spent years learning through trial and error. By 1973, the financial pressures of minor league baseball were becoming impossible to ignore. Randy needed money during the off-season, and wrestling offered a way to use his athletic skills to pay the bills. He started wrestling part-time, initially seeing it as just a way to make ends meet until his baseball career took off. His first wrestling persona was called the Spider, inspired by the Spider-Man character. This early version of Randy was nothing like the flamboyant Macho Man that fans would later love. The Spider was more straightforward, without the colorful outfits or over-the-top personality that would make him famous. Randy's friend Terry the Goose Stevens and Georgia Championship Wrestling promoter Ole Anderson suggested he change his ring name to Randy Savage. They thought the name fit his fierce, aggressive style in the ring much better than the Spider. The name stuck, and Randy began developing the intensity that would become his trademark. He wasn't just playing a character, he was creating something that felt real and dangerous. As Randy spent more time in wrestling rings, something unexpected happened. He realized he was naturally good at this. Really good. His baseball background gave him coordination and timing that other wrestlers struggled to develop. His understanding of entertainment, learned from watching his father, helped him connect with audiences in ways that surprised even veteran wrestlers. The crowds responded to his energy and his willingness to push himself to the limit in every match. Wrestling started feeling less like a side job and more like his real calling. The money was getting better as he improved, and the creative aspects of developing his character excited him in ways that baseball never had. In baseball, you either got the hit or you didn't. In wrestling, you could control the story, work with your opponent to create something memorable, and really connect with the audience on an emotional level. The moment Randy realized wrestling could be more than just off-season work came during a particularly intense match where everything clicked. His timing was perfect, the crowd was completely invested, and he felt the rush of controlling their emotions through his performance. Baseball had been about individual achievement, but wrestling was about creating art with another person while entertaining hundreds of people at once. Baseball's loss became wrestling's gain when Randy discovered his true calling in the ring. His athletic foundation would prove crucial for developing the intense, high-energy style that made him famous. Those years of conditioning, mental toughness, and performing under pressure had prepared him for something he never expected. The former outfielder was about to become one of wrestling's biggest stars. How did a small family wrestling promotion become the training ground for one of wrestling's greatest performers? When Randy decided to fully commit to wrestling, he joined his father Angelo and brother Lanny in their family operation called International Championship Wrestling, or ICW. This wasn't just any regional territory, though. ICW was what wrestling insiders called an outlaw promotion, which meant they operated outside the established territorial system and weren't afraid to ruffle feathers. Working for family created pressures that other wrestlers never experienced. Randy couldn't just show up, do his job, and go home. Every match, every promo, every business decision reflected on the Poffo family name. Angelo had built ICW from nothing, and Randy felt the weight of that legacy every time he stepped through the curtain. If he had a bad match, it wasn't just Randy Savage who looked foolish, it was Angelo's son. That kind of pressure either breaks wrestlers or makes them great, and Randy used it as fuel. ICW operated differently than most regional territories. They didn't play by the gentlemen's agreements that kept other promotions in their lanes. Angelo booked ICW in direct competition with Jerry Jarrett's Memphis territory, which created instant heat and controversy. This meant ICW wrestlers, especially Randy, had to work twice as hard to prove they belonged. They couldn't rely on friendly relationships with other promoters or established booking deals. They had to earn everything through pure talent and determination. The outlaw status actually worked in Randy's favor. Without the restrictions of the traditional territorial system, he had complete creative freedom to experiment with his character. He started developing the flamboyant persona that would make him famous. The colorful outfits began appearing during his ICW days. The dramatic gestures and over-the-top personality traits were tested and refined in front of small crowds who became his first real fans of the Macho Man character. Randy's brother Lanny was also developing his own wrestling persona in ICW, and the competition between them pushed both to improve constantly. Lanny was more technical and cerebral in his approach, while Randy was pure intensity and charisma. They'd practice promos together, critique each other's matches, and challenge each other to be better. This sibling rivalry created an environment where mediocrity wasn't acceptable. Both brothers knew they were being compared not just to other wrestlers, but to each other. The interview skills that would become Randy's greatest weapon were sharpened during his ICW years. Angelo understood that wrestling was entertainment first, and he encouraged Randy to develop his speaking ability. Randy started experimenting with different voice patterns, building toward the distinctive rapid-fire delivery that would captivate audiences. He practiced catchphrases and dramatic pauses, learning how to control a crowd's energy through his words alone. During this period, a young woman named Elizabeth Hewlett joined ICW as an interviewer. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had a natural presence on camera that complemented Randy's intense personality perfectly. Their relationship developed slowly, starting as professional respect and growing into something deeper. Elizabeth understood Randy's drive and perfectionism in ways that other people couldn't. She saw past the developing Macho Man character to the dedicated athlete underneath. ICW's operations were rough around the edges compared to bigger territories. They ran shows in small venues, often with limited budgets and basic production values. But this stripped-down environment forced Randy to focus on the fundamentals. He couldn't rely on elaborate staging or expensive pyrotechnics. His character had to work based purely on his personality, his ring work, and his ability to connect with audiences. This foundation would prove crucial when he eventually reached bigger stages with more resources. The family promotion became Randy's laboratory for testing what worked and what didn't. He tried different character elements, various wrestling styles, and countless promo approaches. Some experiments failed completely, but others became signature elements of his persona. The freedom to fail and learn from those failures was something most wrestlers never got. They had to be polished from day one, while Randy could refine his craft without the pressure of national television or major storylines. Angelo's booking philosophy influenced how Randy approached storytelling in wrestling. ICW storylines were more personal and intense than what other territories were doing. They focused on real emotions and genuine conflicts between characters. Randy learned that the best wrestling stories came from truth, even if that truth was exaggerated for entertainment purposes. This understanding would serve him well when he started creating more complex characters later in his career. Randy realized he had outgrown what ICW could offer him. The territory was successful within its limitations, but Randy's ambitions were bigger than what a regional promotion could satisfy. He'd mastered the basics of character work, developed his interview skills, and proven he could carry storylines and main event matches. The Macho Man persona was fully formed and ready for a bigger stage. ICW gave Randy the perfect laboratory to create the character that would conquer the wrestling world. The family environment provided both pressure and support, while the outlaw nature of the promotion gave him creative freedom that most wrestlers never experienced. By 1985, Randy was ready to take his act to the biggest stage in wrestling, armed with skills and confidence that could only come from years of experimentation and family-driven perfectionism. What made Randy Savage's WWF debut in June 1985 so shocking that it instantly made him a star? The answer lies in one simple decision that nobody saw coming. When Randy stepped into the WWF, he walked into a wrestling world that was exploding with popularity. Hulk Hogan had already become the face of the Rock and Wrestling Connection, bringing wrestling into mainstream culture like never before. MTV was showing wrestling content. Celebrities were getting involved in storylines. Wrestling was becoming entertainment for the masses, not just hardcore fans. The WWF was gobbling up talent from dying territories across the country, and Randy was just another acquisition in Vince McMahon's master plan for national domination. But Randy understood something that most other wrestlers didn't get. He knew that standing out in this new landscape required more than just good wrestling skills. You needed to be different, memorable, and most importantly, unpredictable. WF officials presented Randy as the hottest free agent in wrestling. They built up his arrival by having established managers compete for his services. Bobby Heenan wanted him. Jimmy Hart was interested. Classy Freddie Blassie threw his hat in the ring. These were the biggest names in wrestling management, and they all wanted to work with the new guy from ICW. The wrestling world was watching to see which established manager would guide Randy's WWF career. Then Randy shocked everyone. Instead of choosing one of the proven managers, he selected a virtually unknown woman named Miss Elizabeth as his manager. Fans were confused. Even other wrestlers didn't understand what Randy was thinking. Elizabeth had been working as an interviewer in ICW, but she had zero experience managing wrestlers on the national stage. She was beautiful and poised, but nobody knew if she could handle the pressure of WWF television. This decision proved that Randy understood wrestling psychology better than anyone expected. While other wrestlers were making predictable choices, Randy created instant intrigue. Fans immediately started asking questions. Who was this mysterious woman? Why did Randy choose her over established managers? What was their relationship? The curiosity alone made people pay attention to Randy's matches and interviews. Randy's look was perfectly suited for the WWF's move toward mainstream entertainment. His colorful outfits were unlike anything wrestling fans had seen before. He wore bright bandanas, flashy sunglasses, and vibrant jackets that made him stand out even on a roster full of characters. While other wrestlers wore basic trunks and boots, Randy looked like a rock star who happened to wrestle. His visual presentation was so striking that people noticed him immediately, even if they'd never seen him wrestle. The development of his signature speaking style happened quickly once he hit WWF television. Randy's rapid-fire delivery and distinctive voice patterns were perfect for television. His "ooh yeah" catchphrase became instantly recognizable. Unlike other wrestlers who spoke in generic tough guy voices, Randy's vocal style was completely unique. He could build excitement and tension through his words alone, making even simple interviews feel important and dramatic. Randy's wrestling style was different from what WWF fans were used to seeing. While some WWF stars focused more on entertainment than athletic performance, Randy brought legitimate intensity to every match. His moves looked impactful and real. He wrestled with an urgency that made fans believe he was actually fighting, not just performing. This combination of athletic credibility and entertainment value made him a complete performer. The fan reaction to Randy's early WWF appearances was immediate and strong. His first televised match saw him defeat a local wrestler, but the way he won impressed everyone watching. Randy didn't just beat his opponent, he dominated him with moves that looked devastating. Fans could see that this wasn't just another character wrestler. This was someone who could actually go in the ring and back up his flashy persona with real talent. Randy's early storylines showcased his ability to create compelling drama. His feud with George the Animal Steele was built around Steele's innocent crush on Miss Elizabeth and Randy's jealous reaction. This wasn't just about two wrestlers fighting. It was about complex emotions and relationship dynamics. Randy could portray jealousy, possessiveness, and rage in ways that felt real and relatable, even in wrestling's theatrical environment. Within months of his debut, Randy had established himself as one of WWF's most compelling new stars. He was getting featured matches on television. His interviews were must-see television. Fans were either cheering him or booing him, but they were never indifferent. That's the mark of a true star in wrestling, the ability to make people care about what happens to you. Randy's unpredictable debut strategy proved he understood the new wrestling landscape better than veterans who'd been in the business for decades. While other wrestlers were following established formulas, Randy was creating something entirely new. His willingness to take risks and trust his instincts set him apart from everyone else on the roster. The former baseball player had found his calling, and the wrestling world was about to see what true star power looked like. Which match elevated Randy Savage from rising star to wrestling legend forever? The answer came through his pursuit of championship gold and the unexpected consequences that followed. In February 1986, Randy defeated Tito Santana to capture his first major WWF championship, the Intercontinental title. This wasn't just another title change. This victory established Randy as a dominant force who could carry championship-level storylines and main event matches. Randy's reign as Intercontinental Champion was marked by his intense protection of the title and his increasingly paranoid behavior. He treated the championship like it was the most important thing in the world, which made fans believe it actually mattered. His matches became more personal and more violent. He wasn't just defending a title, he was defending his identity as the Macho Man. This psychological investment made every defense feel crucial. The championship reign put Randy on a collision course with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, one of the most respected technical wrestlers in the business. Steamboat was everything Randy wasn't in terms of wrestling style. Where Randy was explosive and unpredictable, Steamboat was smooth and methodical. Where Randy relied on intensity and charisma, Steamboat built his reputation on pure wrestling skill and athleticism. Their contrasting styles created natural tension that promised an incredible match. The build-up to their WrestleMania III encounter began with one of the most brutal attacks in wrestling history. Randy crushed Steamboat's throat with the ring bell during a televised match, creating a storyline that felt genuinely dangerous. Steamboat disappeared from television for months, supposedly recovering from his injuries. This absence built anticipation for his return and created real heat between the two wrestlers. Fans genuinely believed Randy had seriously injured Steamboat, which made their eventual confrontation feel like a revenge story. When Steamboat returned, he was focused solely on getting his hands on Randy. The personal nature of their feud elevated it beyond just another championship match. This wasn't about wrestling titles or company politics. This was about payback for a vicious attack that could have ended Steamboat's career. The emotions felt real because they were built on a foundation of legitimate athletic competition and personal animosity. Expectations for their WrestleMania III match were incredibly high. Wrestling fans knew both men were capable of great performances, but nobody expected what they were about to witness. The match was scheduled for the Pontiac Silverdome in front of over 90,000 fans, the biggest wrestling audience either man had ever performed for. The pressure was enormous, but both wrestlers embraced it. Randy and Steamboat spent months preparing for their encounter. They reportedly choreographed every move, writing sequences on legal pads and memorizing the match move for move. This level of preparation was unusual for wrestling matches, which typically relied more on improvisation and calling spots during the action. Their meticulous planning showed their commitment to creating something special. The technical mastery both men brought to their legendary 14-minute match was immediately obvious. Every move flowed perfectly into the next. The timing was flawless. The storytelling was compelling from the opening bell to the final pinfall. Randy's explosive offense contrasted beautifully with Steamboat's technical counters. Neither wrestler wasted a single movement or gesture. Every action served the story they were telling. Their WrestleMania III Classic redefined what wrestling could be on the biggest stage. Previous WrestleMania matches had focused more on celebrity involvement and entertainment spectacle. Randy and Steamboat proved that pure wrestling skill could captivate massive audiences just as effectively as any celebrity cameo or elaborate production. Their match was proof that wrestling fans appreciated genuine athletic competition when it was presented properly. The crowd reaction throughout the match was electric. Over 90,000 fans were completely invested in every near fall and dramatic moment. When Steamboat finally pinned Randy to win the championship, the reaction was deafening. The audience had witnessed something special, and they knew it. The immediate aftermath saw fans on their feet, celebrating not just Steamboat's victory, but the incredible performance they just witnessed. Wrestling experts still consider this match one of the greatest ever because it combined technical excellence with emotional storytelling. The athletic skill was undeniable, but the psychology was equally impressive. Both wrestlers understood how to make the audience care about the outcome through their actions and reactions. They created drama through wrestling moves rather than relying on outside interference or gimmicks. Losing the title actually elevated Randy's status rather than hurt it. His performance proved he could deliver classic matches when the stakes were highest. Wrestling fans and industry insiders recognized that Randy had just participated in something truly special. Losing to Steamboat in such a memorable way was more valuable than winning a forgettable match against a lesser opponent. The Steamboat match positioned Randy for even bigger opportunities in the WWF. His reputation as a big match performer opened doors to main event status and championship opportunities that might not have been available otherwise. Wrestling promoters knew they could trust Randy to deliver when it mattered most, which made him a valuable asset for major storylines and pay-per-view events. The Steamboat match proved Randy could deliver classic performances when it mattered most, establishing him as one of wrestling's elite performers and setting the stage for his eventual rise to the top of the wrestling world. How did wrestling's most powerful alliance become its most bitter rivalry? The story begins at WrestleMania IV in March 1988, when Randy Savage captured his first WWF championship. The tournament to crown a new champion was one of the biggest wrestling events of the decade, and Randy's victory over Ted DiBiase in the finals was the moment everything changed for him. But the most iconic image from that night wasn't Randy holding up the title belt. It was him celebrating with Miss Elizabeth on his shoulders, both of them beaming with joy as confetti fell from the ceiling. That celebration marked the beginning of something bigger than just a championship reign. Hulk Hogan had been instrumental in helping Randy win the tournament, appearing at ringside to even the odds against DiBiase and his bodyguard Virgil. The mutual respect between Randy and Hogan was obvious, and their friendship felt genuine to wrestling fans who had watched them support each other through various storylines. When they officially formed the Mega Powers Alliance, it seemed like the most natural partnership in wrestling. The Mega Powers dominated the WWF like no tag team had before them. They weren't just two wrestlers working together. They were the company's two biggest stars, combining their popularity and talent into something unprecedented. Their matches drew huge crowds and television ratings. Merchandise sales went through the roof. Wrestling fans couldn't get enough of seeing Hogan and Randy team up against common enemies. The alliance represented everything that was exciting about wrestling in the late 1980s. Randy's championship reign with Hogan by his side was the peak of his career up to that point. He had proven he could carry the company as its top champion, and having Hogan's support legitimized his position in ways that surprised even skeptical fans. Their combined charisma and star power made every appearance feel like a major event. When they walked to the ring together, the crowd noise was deafening. Wrestling had never seen anything quite like the Mega Powers. But success couldn't hide the growing tension that was building between the two stars. Randy's naturally suspicious personality began creating problems that nobody anticipated. His overprotective behavior toward Miss Elizabeth became more obvious and more concerning. He watched every interaction she had with other wrestlers, including Hogan. What started as normal caution slowly transformed into something much more unhealthy and obsessive. The cracks in their partnership became visible during routine backstage segments and interviews. Randy would tense up whenever Hogan spoke directly to Elizabeth or showed her any attention. His facial expressions revealed jealousy and insecurity that he tried to hide but couldn't control completely. Wrestling fans started noticing these subtle moments where Randy's paranoia would surface, even when nothing inappropriate was happening. Hogan's naturally friendly personality made the situation worse without him realizing it. He treated Elizabeth with the same respect and kindness he showed everyone, but Randy interpreted these normal interactions as threats to his relationship. Every handshake, every conversation, every moment of eye contact became evidence in Randy's mind that Hogan had ulterior motives. His jealousy was consuming him from the inside, affecting his ability to think clearly about their partnership. The backstage politics made everything more complicated. Wrestling insiders knew that Hogan was still the company's top draw and biggest star, even though Randy held the championship. This reality ate at Randy's ego and fed his insecurities. He wanted to be seen as Hogan's equal, but the wrestling business treated Hogan as the more important star. These real tensions between the wrestlers added authenticity to the storyline that was developing on television. The build-up to their eventual confrontation was masterful storytelling that played out over several months. Wrestling fans could sense the tension building, but nobody knew exactly when or how the explosion would happen. Randy's behavior became more erratic and unpredictable. His interviews started containing subtle references to his frustrations. The psychological pressure was building towards something that felt inevitable but shocking at the same time. The explosive breakup happened during a tag team match when Randy's jealousy finally boiled over completely. After Elizabeth was accidentally knocked unconscious during the match, Hogan carried her to the back for medical attention. When Randy saw Hogan holding Elizabeth, something snapped inside him. He attacked Hogan with the championship belt, hitting him repeatedly while screaming about betrayal and disrespect. The attack was vicious and personal in ways that made fans gasp. Randy's heel turn shocked the wrestling world because it felt so real and emotionally raw. This wasn't just a scripted storyline change. It was a complete character transformation that revealed Randy's darkest impulses and deepest fears. His attack on Hogan was driven by genuine emotion that transcended normal wrestling storytelling. Fans had never seen anything quite like it before. Their WrestleMania V showdown became one of the biggest box office successes in wrestling history. The personal nature of their feud, combined with both wrestlers' star power, created massive interest among wrestling fans and casual viewers alike. The match represented the climax of months of psychological storytelling that had captivated audiences. The Mega Powers saga proved Randy could carry storylines that transcended normal wrestling entertainment. His complex character work during this period showed emotional depth and psychological realism that elevated wrestling above simple good versus evil stories into something more sophisticated and compelling. Why did Randy Savage's move to WCW in 1994 shock the wrestling world? The answer lies in what everyone thought they knew about a 41-year-old wrestler who seemed to be winding down his career. By the early 1990s, Randy had been moved into a commentary role for WWF television. Vince McMahon saw him as a veteran who could add credibility to the announce team, while the company focused on building newer stars. Randy was calling matches instead of wrestling them, wearing suits instead of colorful trunks, and watching from ringside while younger wrestlers got the spotlight he once owned. The frustration was eating at Randy from the inside. He wasn't ready to hang up his boots and become just another voice on television. Wrestling was still in his blood, and he felt like he had years of good matches left in him. The WWF's vision for his future didn't match his own ambitions. He wanted to wrestle, not just talk about wrestling. He wanted to create moments in the ring, not just describe them for the audience at home. At 41, many wrestling insiders thought Randy was past his prime when he made the jump to WCW. The wrestling business was brutal on aging bodies, and most wrestlers his age were either retired or working part-time schedules. Critics wondered if Randy could still perform at the level that made him famous. His best years seemed to be behind him in the WWF, so why would WCW expect anything different? The circumstances that led to his departure from WWF after nearly a decade were complex. Randy felt undervalued despite his years of service to the company. He had been one of the biggest stars of wrestling's mainstream boom, but now he was being pushed aside for the next generation. The writing was on the wall. The WWF was moving in a different direction, and Randy wasn't part of their long-term plans as an active wrestler. WCW offered Randy something the WWF wouldn't give him anymore: the chance to wrestle full-time again instead of just commentating. WCW needed established stars to compete with the WWF's roster, and Randy represented a proven draw who could still perform. The financial package was attractive, especially when Randy brought his lucrative Slim Jim endorsement deal with him. That deal reportedly earned him $750,000 per year in 1995, proving his marketability extended beyond just wrestling. Randy's World Championship runs in WCW surprised everyone who thought his best days were over. He won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship multiple times, including a victory in a 60-man battle royal at World War III in 1995. He regained the title in January 1996, proving he could still be the face of a major wrestling company. His matches were intense and competitive, showing that age hadn't slowed down his signature style. The reunion with Miss Elizabeth added emotional weight to Randy's WCW storylines. Fans who had followed their relationship during the WWF years felt genuine nostalgia seeing them back together. Elizabeth became Randy's manager again, creating continuity between his past success and his current run. Their chemistry was still there, and it enhanced every storyline Randy was involved in during his early WCW years. Randy's role in the NWO storyline kept him relevant during WCW's hottest period. The New World Order was the biggest angle in wrestling, and Randy found himself right in the middle of it. He initially teamed with Hulk Hogan before eventually turning on him and joining the NWO. This allowed Randy to continue his legendary rivalry with Hogan while staying involved in WCW's most important storylines. The renewed feuds with Hulk Hogan proved that their chemistry hadn't diminished over the years. Their matches in WCW felt fresh, despite their long history together. Randy's heel work was as convincing as ever, and fans bought into their conflicts just like they had years earlier. The personal animosity between their characters translated perfectly to the WCW environment. Randy proved age was just a number with memorable matches throughout his 40s. He had notable encounters with Ric Flair, Diamond Dallas Page, and other top WCW stars. His conditioning remained impressive, and his intensity never wavered. Younger wrestlers respected his work ethic and ability to elevate their performances through his experience and psychology. The recognition that Randy had successfully reinvented himself came from both fans and wrestling critics. He had proven that established stars could thrive in new environments when given the right opportunities. His WCW run wasn't just a victory lap or a nostalgia act. It was a legitimate second chapter in his career that produced memorable moments and quality matches. Randy's WCW run proved he was far from finished and could adapt to any wrestling environment. He adjusted his style slightly to work with different opponents while maintaining the core elements that made him special. His interviews remained compelling, his matches stayed intense, and his presence elevated every storyline he touched. His 5-year renaissance showed that true stars can thrive regardless of company politics. Randy's success in WCW demonstrated that talent and charisma could overcome age and corporate limitations. He had found a place where his abilities were valued and utilized properly, allowing him to extend his career on his own terms while entertaining fans who thought they'd seen the last of the Macho Man. What personal demons haunted the man behind the Macho Man persona? Behind Randy's flamboyant character was a man struggling with perfectionism and control issues that affected every aspect of his life. The colorful outfits and entertaining interviews masked someone who demanded complete control over his environment and the people around him. Wrestling insiders knew that working with Randy meant dealing with someone who obsessed over every detail, from match choreography to backstage interactions. Stories emerged about Randy's difficult backstage behavior that painted a troubling picture of his personality. He was known for being extremely demanding during rehearsals and planning sessions. Other wrestlers described him as someone who couldn't let go of control, even in situations where his input wasn't needed or wanted. His perfectionism drove him to micromanage everything around him, creating tension with colleagues who preferred more relaxed working relationships. The most disturbing stories involved Randy's overprotective treatment of Miss Elizabeth. Rumors circulated throughout the wrestling industry about him locking Elizabeth in dressing rooms to prevent other wrestlers from interacting with her. These allegations suggested a level of controlling behavior that went far beyond normal relationship dynamics. Wrestlers and backstage personnel reported seeing Elizabeth isolated from others, seemingly at Randy's direction. The stories about Randy controlling Elizabeth's interactions became legendary in wrestling circles. He allegedly monitored her conversations with other wrestlers, managers, and even WWE officials. Elizabeth couldn't move freely backstage without Randy knowing where she was and who she was talking to. This behavior created an uncomfortable atmosphere for everyone involved, as other wrestlers felt they had to walk on eggshells around Elizabeth to avoid Randy's anger. Randy's brother Lanny offered alternative explanations for his actions, defending Randy against the worst accusations. Lanny suggested that Elizabeth herself sometimes preferred the privacy of a locked door, particularly given the environment of the wrestling locker room where the behavior of some male wrestlers was questionable. He argued that Randy was protecting Elizabeth from inappropriate advances rather than controlling her out of jealousy or possessiveness. Lanny's defense highlighted the complex reality of wrestling's backstage culture during that era. Locker rooms were rough environments where crude behavior was common, and women often faced unwanted attention. From this perspective, Randy's protective instincts could be seen as reasonable precautions rather than controlling behavior. However, the extent of his actions suggested something beyond normal protective measures. Randy's perfectionism made him demanding to work with, but also elevated match quality significantly. His meticulous approach to match planning, demonstrated in the WrestleMania III encounter with Ricky Steamboat, where every move was choreographed, showcased his commitment to excellence. Wrestlers who worked with Randy often produced their best performances because he pushed everyone to meet his incredibly high standards. The dedication to his craft came with a cost that affected his relationships with colleagues. Randy's insistence on controlling every aspect of his matches meant long planning sessions and endless rehearsals. Some wrestlers appreciated this approach because it guaranteed quality results. Others found it exhausting and preferred the spontaneity that came with calling matches on the fly during actual competition. The real-life marriage troubles between Randy and Elizabeth paralleled their on-screen drama in uncomfortable ways. Their relationship became strained under the pressure of Randy's controlling behavior and the demands of their wrestling careers. The line between their characters and their real personalities blurred to the point where fans couldn't tell what was scripted and what was genuine marital conflict. Their divorce, announced in 1992, marked the end of one of wrestling's most famous real-life couples. The split affected both their personal and professional lives, as they had to continue working together despite their failed marriage. Elizabeth's departure from Randy's storylines felt natural, because their real relationship had deteriorated to the point where working together became impossible. Persistent rumors about why WWE kept Randy away for years after he left have never been fully explained. The most widespread story suggests that Randy had an affair with Stephanie McMahon, which supposedly caused Vince McMahon to blacklist him from the company. However, there's little concrete evidence to support this claim, and Bruce Pritchard has stated that there were actually numerous discussions about bringing Randy back. The loss of the Slim Jim sponsorship when Randy moved to WCW cost WWE valuable advertising revenue, which may have contributed to their reluctance to work with him again. Some sources suggest that Vince McMahon's personality and his tendency to hold grudges played a role in Randy's exclusion. The exact reasons remain unclear, with various conflicting accounts adding to the mystery. Randy's personal struggles revealed the human cost of maintaining such an intense public persona. The pressure of being the Macho Man character seemed to amplify his natural tendencies toward perfectionism and control. Wrestling's demanding schedule and high-stress environment made it difficult for him to separate his character from his real personality. The man behind the character was far more complex and troubled than fans ever realized. Randy's success came at a personal price that affected his relationships, his mental health, and his ability to find peace outside the wrestling ring. His story serves as a reminder that even the most charismatic performers can struggle with demons that their public personas successfully hide from the world. How did a heart attack in 2011 finally end the mystery surrounding wrestling's most enigmatic star? The answer begins with a tragedy that happened 8 years earlier. In 2003, Miss Elizabeth died unexpectedly at the age of 42. The circumstances surrounding her death were tragic and complicated. She had been living with Lex Luger when she suffered acute toxicity from a mix of painkillers and alcohol. Her death devastated Randy, even though they had been divorced for over a decade and hadn't seen each other in several years. Randy expressed that he felt bad for Elizabeth's family after her passing. Despite their troubled marriage and bitter divorce, her death marked the beginning of his final chapter. The woman who had been such an important part of his wrestling career and personal life was gone. Randy had already been away from wrestling for several years by this point, but Elizabeth's death seemed to affect him deeply. He became even more reclusive and private about his personal life. Randy remained estranged from WWE while his health quietly deteriorated throughout the 2000s. He was living in Florida with his second wife, Lynn Payne, whom he had married in 2010. Randy had stepped away from the wrestling spotlight almost completely. He wasn't making regular appearances or doing interviews. The wrestling world rarely heard from him during these years. Most fans assumed he was simply enjoying retirement and staying out of the public eye by choice. His final years away from wrestling were spent trying to find peace outside the ring. Randy had always been an intense person who struggled with the pressures of fame and the wrestling business. Without the constant demands of performing and traveling, he seemed to be looking for a quieter life. He was no longer the colorful character that fans remembered. Instead, he was just Randy Poffo, trying to live a normal life away from the cameras and crowds. The medical issues that led to his enlarged heart and coronary artery disease had been developing for years without proper treatment. Randy had never been diagnosed or treated for these serious heart problems. His arteries were almost completely blocked, creating a dangerous situation that could have been fatal at any moment. The years of intense physical activity, combined with the stress of his wrestling career, had taken a toll on his cardiovascular system that he wasn't aware of. The morning of May 20th, 2011, started like any other day for Randy and Lynn. They were driving in Randy's Jeep Wrangler near their home in Seminole, Florida. Both were wearing seatbelts as they headed out for what seemed like a routine trip. Randy was behind the wheel, and Lynn was in the passenger seat. Nothing about the morning suggested that tragedy was about to strike. Everything changed in an instant when Randy suffered a sudden heart attack while driving. The pain and shock of the cardiac event caused him to lose control of the vehicle immediately. The Jeep veered off the road and crashed into a tree. Lynn survived the accident, but Randy's condition was critical. The heart attack had been massive and sudden, giving him no warning or chance to pull over safely. Emergency services responded to the crash scene quickly, but their efforts couldn't save Randy. He was pronounced dead at the scene at the age of 58. The wrestling world was shocked by the news. Randy Savage, one of the most vibrant and energetic performers in wrestling history, was gone. Fans couldn't believe that someone who had seemed so full of life could die so suddenly and unexpectedly. The autopsy results revealed the full extent of Randy's health struggles that nobody had known about. He had suffered from serious heart problems, including an enlarged heart and advanced coronary artery disease. His arteries were almost completely blocked, which led to the fatal heart attack. The official cause of death was determined to be heart disease due to the blocked arteries. Most shocking was the fact that Randy had never been treated for these issues, suggesting he either didn't know about them or had chosen not to seek medical care. Randy's sudden death ended years of speculation about his relationship with WWE and why he had been kept out of their programming for so long. His passing brought an outpouring of tributes from wrestlers, fans, and industry insiders who remembered his contributions to the business. The wrestling community mourned the loss of one of its most unique and talented performers. The long overdue recognition finally came in 2015 when Randy was posthumously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. This delay had been conspicuous, especially since many of his contemporaries from wrestling's golden era had already been inducted years earlier. His induction was a mark of distinction that recognized his massive contributions to the wrestling world. Randy's 2015 WWE Hall of Fame induction proved that time heals even the deepest wounds. Whatever business disputes or personal conflicts had kept him away from WWE were finally put aside. His death had ended years of speculation and allowed his true legacy to finally be celebrated properly. The wrestling world could now remember Randy Savage for what he truly was: one of the greatest performers in the history of the business. Randy Savage's story proves that the most compelling characters are often the most complicated people. His influence can be seen in every modern wrestler who combines athletic ability with larger-than-life personality and masterful mic skills. Wrestlers today still try to capture that same magic Randy brought to every interview and match. The Macho Man's legacy reminds us that behind every wrestling legend is a human being, fighting battles we never see. Randy's struggles with control, perfectionism, and personal relationships show us that even our heroes deal with real problems. His January 12, 2015 WWE Hall of Fame induction finally gave him the recognition he deserved all along. Check out our video on Lex Luger. Like and subscribe for 100 years of luck. Until next time.